Right, this is lesson 2 in our statistics unit for Workplace Math 10. Today we're going to look at other ways of measuring centrality. So last lesson we talked just specifically about mean because that's the most common way to represent a data set with one number, but there's other ways too. Okay, so let's review what mean was from last lesson, and then we're going to talk about these other ones. So the mean is also known as the average. Okay. So here's an example data set that we have. So to calculate the average, we find the sum and we divide by how many numbers in the data set. So we go 2 plus 2 plus 3 plus 5 plus 5 plus 7 plus 11. And we divide by, I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 numbers here. Okay. So if I add up all those totals, I get 35. 5. So my mean there is 5. But there's other ways to measure centrality, and in later lessons we'll talk about which one to use. So the first one here is after mean is median. The median is the middle value. When the data set is listed in numerical order, that's important. If there's two values in the middle, you just find the average of those two. So let's look at this data set and we're going to find the middle. So we have 2, 2, 3, 5, 5, 7, and 11. So for me, I find it easiest just to kind of cross off until you get to the center, and then you'll find the center like that. So I'm crossing off. Oh, I've got the central value. So in this data set, actually the median and the average are the same. That means our data set is pretty symmetrical. Okay, another way to measure, represent the data set is the mode. The mode is the most common value. You can have more than one mode, so you just list them both. So in this data set, there are 2 modes. The most common is either 2 or it's 5. It's the number that comes up the most. The mode is really only appropriate if you do have a number that comes up more than other numbers. If every number only appears once, the mode is not very useful. Range is kind of how spread apart the data set is. So it's the difference between the highest and lowest values. So the range is important, especially if you care about, how close together the numbers are. So you might want to know the range, for example, if you're looking at race times for a track athlete. If they have a really big range, that means they're not very consistent, right? But if they have a very small range of values, that means they're running the same times often, so they're more consistent, right? So here in this data set, we want to see how far apart the biggest and smallest numbers are. So I'm going to take the smallest number and the biggest number, and I just want to find the difference, or I want to subtract those two. So the range is not really, it's a little bit different from the other measures. It's kind of telling us something different. It's telling us not about the middle of the data set, but more so about how spread apart the data set is. Okay, so let's do some examples. If you want to try this one, this would be a good time to pause and sort of try this one on your own. Before we look at a graph example. So we're going to find the mean, median, mode, and range. Okay, so we'll start with the mean. One thing to do before you even start with any of these is write your data set in order. That way it's easier to pick everything out. So I'm just going to rewrite this data set. So it's the heights of 6 students. So the smallest is 160. Then I have another 160. And just so I can keep track, I like to cross things off as I'm writing them. Then we have 168, then 169, then 172. Oops, I forgot to write centimeters on that last one. And 183. Writing them in numerical order will help us calculate the median especially, but also the mode. Okay, so for mean, we're going to add them all up. We'll take the sum, and then we'll divide by 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. We have 6 students here. So I've already calculated the sum. If you add up all of these numbers, Let's just do it again just to make sure I've got the right answer. I'm going to get my calculator here. 160. I'm just going to times that by 2 because there's 2 of them. Plus 168 plus 169 plus 172. I get 829, and when I divide that by 6, I get 130. Well, that doesn't seem right. Did I miss one? Oh, I did miss one. Plus 183. I forgot the 183. 1012, and when I divide that by 6, I get 168.7. Let's just double check I've typed everything in right. 69, 172, and 183. Yes. So it's 1012, which I'm going to round this off to 168.7. Okay. The median is just the middle 2 numbers. So when I do the median, here are the middle 2 numbers. So there's 2 of them in this case. So we're going to do the average of those 2. So it's the number between 168 and 169. So it'd be halfway, 168.5. The mode is the most common, and that's 160. That one came up twice. Okay, and the range measures the difference between the biggest and the smallest. So it'd be 183 minus 160. So there's 23 centimeters difference between the biggest height and the smallest height. Okay, let's do an example from a graph. So this graph is showing us the attendance at an amusement park throughout the day. Okay, so at each time I have a different attendance. So what I want to do maybe is just first work on just reading this graph. So I have all these different times here, and then along here I see how many people were at the park. So let's just write down the data points. So at 9 a.m. I had 150 people, because it's halfway between 100 and 200, so that's 150. At 10 a.m. looks like it's exactly 200. At 11 a.m. 300. This makes sense because usually at an amusement park there's going to be more people throughout the day, especially as you get into the afternoon. And then at 12 and 1, it's halfway between 300 and 400, so 350. And at 2 p.m. it's the busiest at 400. Okay, so let's write down those numbers. 150, 200, 300, 350, 350, and 400. So we're going to do the mean, median, moded range. Again, good time to stop here. Check if you can do it yourself and then check back with me. Okay, so mean, I'm going to add up all of those numbers. 150 plus 200 plus 300 plus, oops, forgot the zeros there. There's 2 350s, so I'm timesing it by 2. 1750. And there are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 data points. So I'm dividing that by 6. 291.6. I'll round it to about 292. Okay, median is the middle number. Now there are 2 numbers in the middle. So 300 and 350. You want to do the average of those 2. So you can just think about what's halfway between 300 and 350 if you want, or you can just add them up and divide by 2, and you get 325. Okay, and then the mode is the one that happens most often. 350 is the only number that occurs twice. And the range is the difference between the largest and the smallest. So 400 minus 150, which is 250.